Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this Scrum Pulse. For people who've been here for a while, we've been having some interesting early discussion with our two presenters. But let's now spend some time getting into the real meat of this presentation, all about product ownership. Who is a product owner anyway? And speaking today, we've got two excellent speakers. We've got Dave West, who's CEO and product owner at Scrum.org, and Rob van Lanen, who is a PSD and I assume Agile coach consultant. You probably wear many different hats at Prowareness. And Rob van Lanen, who are going to be talking about the product ownership role. This webinar is being recorded, so if you are watching this recording, hopefully you will get some value from this. For the people who did join us live, thank you very much for joining us live. I do want to remind everybody that we do have there are opportunity to ask questions and to have them answered. So please, if you have anything that you would like discussed, please take advantage of the question window there, and I will help moderate and pass those questions off to our two excellent presenters. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves and then kick off this presentation. So Dave, why don't we start with you?
Hi everybody, my name is Dave West. I've got the silly English accent. I'm talking to you from Burlington, Massachusetts. As Steve said, I am the product owner and CEO of Scrum.org. So I run Scrum.org for Ken Schwaber. And I'm based in Burlington, which in this actual office was not this physical office, but this building was where the first ever Scrum project was. So, and they had some very interesting challenges with product ownership, which maybe we'll share during today's presentation. Rob.
Hi everybody, my name is Rob van Lanen from the beautiful city, actually my birth city of Helmond in the Netherlands, so that explains the slightly freaky Dutch accent. I am a product owner trainer and a Scrum Master trainer and a coach for Prowareness and Scrum.org as a professional Scrum trainer. And I love to talk about product ownership, and I know you do as well, Dave, so let's kick it off.
Excellent. So hello everybody. So just to give you a little context, I won't spend long on these slides, just to set the scene. So Scrum.org, even though we are called Scrum.org and we are the home of Scrum, interestingly, we do not have Scrum in our title. And this is the reason why I wanted to highlight this, particularly as we talk about product ownership, because product ownership is sort of like the guilty, the evil step aunt of the Scrum team sometimes, because I know Rob's got another analogy which he'll share later, but you know, it's all part of being able to deliver amazing products that wow your customers. And maybe as somebody that we've obviously neglected. So when we talk about the profession of software development, and delivery, we really care about product ownership as well here at Scrum.org. Just some data points that what's interesting as well is, you know, between 12 and 15 million people are doing Scrum every day. You know, so that means there's millions of product owners out there that are wrestling with this role. And hopefully we'll be able to share some insights with you. We are the home of Scrum. We help maintain the Scrum Guide with Ken and Jeff, and as you can see, a lot of people interact with us every day. So some of the things we'll be sharing with you are taken from those interactions, some of the sort of highlights, as it were. So Rob, a little bit about Prowareness.
At Prowareness, we try to transform software-driven companies into responsive enterprises, meaning that we try to improve the business side of things, the IT side of things, and try to bring more agility in the workforce today, actually.
Yeah, so Prowareness are one of our very close partners at Scrum.org, and we spend a lot of time talking to them about how they're trying to build with their customers these responsive organizations, and increasingly those conversations have been about product ownership, and that's the reason why we're talking today and the reason why Rob and I are here. So let's get into the meat of it. Oh, if you need to contact us, there's our photos. Rob's is obviously a little bit nicer than mine for some reason. Not quite sure what happened in the editor, probably because he's slightly better looking than me anyway. Feel free to tweet us or to email us, and if you can't get your questions answered today, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help, and we are very excited to help. Unfortunately, maybe a little too excited, as you'll see as we go through the slides. when we talk about today's presentation, I just wanted to just give you an idea of what we'll be going through. Now, we have a little bit too much content. Rob and I had a hard time sort of like whittling it down. And unlike a backlog, we couldn't just add it and then just put a line and not get to it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the product owner role, the challenges of the role, where requirements fit in, because there's a lot of misconceptions, myths we would like to call them, around requirements and the role of product ownership, and then who plays the role, and then we're going to finish with making it work, trying to give you some practical advice for the role and for how you can make this work in your organization. It wouldn't be a presentation without a Dilbert, so I think that this sort of sums it up. As a product owner, you often feel that you spend your entire life trying to say yes. Now, I've got a guilty secret that Rob will probably laugh at. I was the product manager, product owner of something called the Rational Unified Process. Some of you may be aware of the RUP. Now, the RUP we had a lot of customers. It was in the 90s and early 2000s a very successful life cycle. However, one of the biggest mistakes I made, and I made several, but one of them was I never said no to a customer. I ended up adding more and more content to the Rational Unified Process until it became this massive hodgepodge of complexity. And that, you know, I think that really summed up the mistakes I made. Instead of focusing RUP on something that was very, very clear, you know, in terms of delivering architected software, which was what it's focused using object-oriented analysis and design, I ended up making this incredibly complex process. And I remember talking to Ken, because I've known Ken Schwaber for a long time, and he would laugh at me about the RUP and maybe throw a few barbed insults about its complexity. And I said, well, Scrum's too small, it can't possibly work. And ultimately, though, the success of the two processes really just sums it up. So in the Scrum Guide, the product owner is a very simple definition. This is taken from the Scrum Guide and is almost all the stuff that the Scrum Guide has about the product owner. And you'll see that their responsibilities are relatively simple. They express the product owner, the backlog items. They order it. They optimize value. They ensure the product backlog is visible, transparent. That means the team can actually see it and make sure that the people, even if they can't see it, or if they understand what's in the backlog. Now, there's one phrase in the Scrum Guide, and I know Rob will talk probably more about this when we look at the life cycle a little bit more detail, is that they work with a development team. So the product owner ultimately is accountable for everything that is said above, but they aren't necessarily responsible for delivering it every day, meaning that they can take advantage of the development team, and that's particularly important when we look at scaling. But ultimately, the product owner is accountable, and I think that's a better word, for delivering value. My job here at Scrum.org is very simple. I've got to deliver on our mission, and Ken, via some metrics, clearly measures me on the success of that. Now, I can't do it alone, and I have a I have a couple of teams and an entire community that are helping me deliver that, companies like Prowareness, but ultimately, I'm accountable for that. Rob, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, actually, what you said on being a product owner for several time, I learned the best out of product ownership by making a lot of mistakes. So those mistakes are ultimately great. I have been trying to be a product owner 2008 and the Scrum Master at the same time. And the stuff that I learned there, obviously I failed miserably, but the stuff that I learned there was without a doubt my best training school I had. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, and do you think that the biggest challenge that you had was delivering value, Rob?
Delivering value, especially, and trying to be a Scrum Master at the same time, which has such a tension in between it that you shouldn't try to be one person who can do it all. That's really not working out. At least it wasn't for me.
And that's a key tenet of the Scrum Guide. It actually says those separation of church and state kind of things is crucial, and having those two separate roles. So, Rob, take us a little bit, you know, as the Scrum Master expert here as well, could you take us a little bit through the role, the life cycle, and where product ownership fits there?
Sure. Sure, what we see here is the drawing that most of you probably have heard of. Let me try to focus on two events especially. I usually give practical advice to product owners to actually surround their work around the two key events for them, at least to me. The sprint retrospective obviously is important, and it all revolves around the product increment, all true. But looking at the events, we have the sprint review at the end of the sprint, where we show what we have done towards our stakeholders, gather feedback, implement the market conditions, and figure out with our stakeholders what to do next. And we have with them our backlog refinement, which is not necessarily an event, but it's more like an activity. And if you revolve all your stuff regarding managing the product backlog and being accountable for gaining success and gaining value throughout the product backlog, you could have your refinement and your review as your central pieces of interaction with your development team. Obviously, doesn't only need to be around that event. I usually give a lot of advice to development team members that I don't see working into practice all that often, is just pick up the phone. Because that product owner is there to save your company and to maximize the value. And you, Dave, as an experienced product owner, know I know how busy you are and how busy our product owners can get. And the phone is like a golden tool in order to help them.
Yeah, and so the other event that I worry a lot about is sprint planning, and that's both preparation for sprint planning as well as actually going to it. I think that's, you know, actually preparing for a sprint planning event is crucial. So even though refinement isn't in the Scrum Guide as it's talked about, but it doesn't say it's a mandatory event, I really find, you know, planning for the sprint planning session, and really when I plan for the sprint planning session, I'm focusing on value, trying to say, okay, looking at the entire world ahead of me, what's the next chunk of most valuable stuff that I can deliver? Yeah. And yes, I've got a plan and a roadmap, but those things are really, really crucial.
What I typically see, Dave, if your backlog refinement is key and is implemented, then after your sprint review, you can use your sprint planning in order to be a little bit more agile and a little bit more on-the-fly refinement in order to maximize the value. But you are absolutely right. Obviously, the sprint planning comes after sprint review of the previous sprint, and they go in a timely fashion. But thanks for stating that out.
So really just summing that up, maximizing value, sole person. And that's an important point, Rob, that there's a lot of confusion and, you know, product owner committee and stuff. Well, that isn't what the Scrum Guide, and whether that works for your organization, I don't mind, but it's not Scrum. Product owner is a single carbon-based life form, unless you find some other exotic material that they're made of, that is it responsible for managing the product backlog. And they have to be empowered by their organization. So in a lot of large organizations, I know, Rob, you work with a lot of these big companies that where decisions don't really get made by any one person. They get made by, it's almost as though it's an evolution to the decision, as it were, lots of people. But ultimately, what we find is in those organizations, and the motivation in the Scrum Guide was that they must be empowered to make decisions about the product. That means that some of that evolution of decision making needs to be actually got rid of in favor of individuals making decisions. And they are the only people that can tell the development team what to do, other than the fire marshals. When there's a fire, obviously you can they have some control, they can tell them to get out of the building, but other than that, the product owner is the only person that can tell them what to do.
Yeah, when I see it kind of like the proxy coming in, I see that in a lot of companies as kind of like a practical in-between solution of having a proxy, because the real product owner is not that accessible, and the proxy maybe from the IT side is. And obviously, if that works for you, then go for it. But to me, that reminds me a little bit of the kids' shopping carts that we see. I'm not sure in Boston, but here in the Netherlands, when we go shopping, we have this cart, and there's a little baby kid underneath the cart, and he's like steering and going right, going left, but the movement doesn't imply an actual change of direction. And that reminds me of the proxy product owner every time I'm in the shopping mall and I'm seeing this cart. Because really we need to be steering in one direction, and that person pretty much is really busy. So we'll get to that later with the commandments, but it's kind of like a tension that is in there that needs to be addressed.
It is incredibly challenging because the person that you want never has the time, and the person that you get has loads of time but can't make the decisions. But we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
And oh, hang on, sorry. So I think this is a good example of a product owner. So this is, I mean, and we can all think of our own examples, but Steve Jobs is probably the most famous product owner and really embodied, I think, a lot of what product ownership really means. You know, he had a vision, he drove that vision maniacally, excuse me, sorry everybody, drove that vision maniacally and made a lot of tough decisions to deliver that product. Now, there could have been wrong decisions. In fact, I think he made lots of wrong decisions in his life as a product owner. Obviously, we saw his, you know, his final set of decisions, which were incredibly good decisions for Apple. But ultimately, he was, and he describes himself, you know, being a god, and I think a lot of product owners get treated in that way and have that level of control. Can you think of any product owners you know, Rob, that are good examples?
Sure. I know from a company in the Netherlands that I'm not allowed to mention, but what I saw there is that whenever he had to make a decision, he made it. And that is typical of such product owners, and also of the late Steve Jobs, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty much the problem is if people know that these kinds of mini CEOs or real CEOs will make decisions when asked, is that we give them too much decisions. So we need to find really a balance in what is the mandate of the team and what is the mandate of the product owner. Because typically people who make these decisions overnight, they do them by gut feel, they know how to do it, and they're really good at it, and they only need to be coached on often not making a decision or asking a Socratic question or asking a powerful question to the team instead of making these decisions. So that's the only setback that we then tend to coach on. And these people often are filled with purpose. Most of the time, these teams that are interacting with them, yeah, they don't need much. They don't need much from them. They only need to know the purpose, the why, as Simon Sinek calls it, and filled with purpose, combined with the boundaries of Scrum, so people can truly self-organize. It can really take a lift there. And I've seen some good teams really go fast with this product owner in place. I love it.
So basically they provide guardrails, direct value guardrails to decisions that are being made and empower the team to make certain decisions within these guardrails. But ultimately when there's a conflict or when there's a challenge, they're the person that makes that final call. And also sometimes they'll realize that mistakes are made by the team or you know, in terms of the features that are being delivered, etc. So that is, which brings us, you know, sort of the problems that we see, and I zoomed through this build. So at Scrum.org, obviously we interact with about 4 million people every year, which not personally interact with them, that would be a little challenging, but you know, we get emails and the forums that we manage and the blogs, etc. And you see these discussions, and what we find is that there seems to be pretty much, you know, these broad problems. As a growing product company, a company that's, you know, building software products, maybe it's an ISV, maybe it's one of the new finance companies or whatever, that the problem we see mostly is when it's a small team, product ownership is actually pretty successful, usually. You know, there's some challenges, making the right decisions, getting the right data, stuff like that, but generally it's pretty successful. As that team grows, though, as they get more and more teams, and I can speak from personal experience, I was the Chief Product Officer at TaskTop, which was a startup, and as we got some VC money and we grew our engineering organization, we got more customers, we then grew and grew and grew, and I found that my time that historically I could spend with the development team was being taken away from me, that I was doing a lot more outbound stuff, a lot more customer-centric stuff, a lot more VC stuff. And the product's becoming quite complex under the hood as well. And I was losing that, like, I knew everything about everything. And so and then I was becoming nervous and scared because I was losing my knowledge of the product, and also I had more customers and I had more responsibility, because if it went wrong when we had like 10 customers, it was, I could phone them all up and say, I'm dreadfully sorry, we had a problem, da, da, da. When we have 1,000 customers, and when our revenues go from 1 million to 100 million, I started to get a lot more scared. And that was definitely a set of challenges that I had. And then what we see for IT companies, organizations where they are wrestling with Agile, they aren't a product-oriented company yet, maybe that's one of their problems. We see that they've got this waterfall kind of mentality around product ownership, and this delegation of responsibility, and this zero accountability across the organization. And they don't have the concept of product, so product ownership is interesting. And the Agile's being and Scrum's in IT only, therefore who takes on a businessy kind of role such as product ownership? And process is, they look to process to make all the decisions for them, reviews, sign-offs, all of those things, and the PMO enacts that process and makes sure it happens. So ultimately it's quite a complex environment for product ownership. Do these resonate with you, Rob? Are these things that you see?
Yeah, I see this a lot, and actually the million-dollar question I see product owners getting is, when is it going to be done? When is it going to be finished? Please tell me when it is done.
Oh,
and yeah.
How much is it going to cost?
Yeah.
When are we going to get it? And when's it going to be ready? So not only are we challenged with the role as our position grows, or in the existing organization that our world is, we still get these questions, and Agile doesn't replace these questions. We still need them, and we need them to be answered, right?
Yeah, we can answer them, obviously. It's just that we cannot send you a sprint report giving you the final answer. So we need to answer these questions continuously. And we have a dialogue with our stakeholders together and figure out how to solve our problems together. Maybe use a sprint review, for example.
So the beauty of it is that we can definitely give you forecasts for all of these questions always, and the product owner has to be empowered to be able to work with the team to get that and to get those answers for these forecasts. But the beauty of an empirical process, the beauty of the idea of sprints, is that you continuously refine your knowledge. You continuously deliver value where you actually can then say observable value that you then can say, well, that gives us this understanding, which improves our ultimate understanding of these three questions. So the other question is around, whoa, hang on, sorry about this, it's like technical. See, that's the reason why you should never give product owners computers, really. The other thing that's interesting is when you look at the ownership dilemma, and this is a slide that we talk about a lot in our professional product owner class. You've got, ultimately the product owner is a proxy, Rob. It's a proxy for the customer. It's a proxy for the business. It's a proxy for the decision making, that you're actually saying, okay, if I deliver this, will my customer buy more product or whatever, or do whatever action I'm seeking them to do. So that means you've got this sort of inbound and outbound kind of world. You've got this planning kind of world. You've got this market sensing world, and you're trying to balance all of this whilst trying to be responsive to your team, to your delivery team, or development team. And that can be very, very, very challenging, because trying to get all these things at once, often means that you have to ask these questions. How many products, how many roles, how many products can a product owner manage, how many roles actually embodies all of this, and who's responsible for doing it.
Yeah, and the main challenge here is that nobody loves you, actually, because you're saying no all the time if you want to be successful, right?
Yeah, and this is an interesting piece of data. This is from what drives devs crazy, and I think 22.5% of them answered that the product manager or product owner was that person. And I think this quote from General Douglas MacArthur sums it up: the enemy is in front of us, the enemy is behind us. So it's the most important role, because delivering value delivering the thing your customer needs is crucial, but it's also a role that ultimately nobody kind of likes, including the customer, who even though you're delivering amazing stuff to them, always wants more.
Yeah.
It is. Sorry, Rob.
And you need to embody the art of saying no. I heard from a colleague of mine, Rini. He said it's like having 50 shades of no right at your disposal.
That's a good idea. I mean, the ability to say no without annoying everybody perhaps is one of the most important traits any product owner can have. And when we look at who plays the role, you have to have somebody that can deliver value, can say no, which is a thing I couldn't do as the RUP product manager. And perhaps one of the reasons why I couldn't do that was because I was relatively junior, and my stakeholders were like Grady Booch, Jim Rumba, Eva Jakobsen, Philippe Christian, all these amazing luminaries who have forgotten more about software delivery than I even know today. These guys are rock stars, or were rock stars of those times. And so being able to say no to them, or being able to say no to smart customers, or being able to say no, was really beyond my skill, even though I had a very clear vision, what I wanted the product to be and what I wanted RUP to become, challenged to do that, and ended up, delivering to everybody and then helping nobody, which was very problematic. So talking about requirements, obviously another deal, but
yeah, but this is a crucial part. This is a crucial part, Dave. It's about leadership, personal leadership, actually. So there's a good message inside this deal, but as is in almost any, I must add.
And making this, see if I can get consensus. I mean, that isn't leadership. Consensus is, maybe a characteristic, but ultimately you have to deliver something. You have to get the most value, and you have to make some calls. So, requirements, though, is still an important point that needs to be done. You still need to do requirements on an Agile project. I know that sounds awful. I mean, you'd have thought there was a magic wand, and when, the manifesto was signed, the end of requirements. And it's interesting, the amount of effort requirements takes, and the amount of time it takes on a classic waterfall project, and testing is obviously very related to that, is crucial and is a significant amount of time. That means that you have to have people that can do requirements work in your delivery team, in your development team. You have to do that. As you scale, you certainly do. You still need to do some work on requirements. And the Scrum team is responsible for defining those requirements. The product owner gives the guardrails, I think Rob said, which was really nice. This sets this direction and makes sure it happens. And maybe they do some of the requirements. Maybe they do all the requirements, depending on situation. But ultimately, the Scrum team needs to work with, as a whole, to deliver requirements.
Definitely. I must say, Dave, I have the analogy of requirements with being big documents, comprehensive, replacing the need for talking to each other. So the other term might be desirements, or stuff that we want to get done.
Okay, I like that. I like desirements. We should patent that quickly. Steve, make a note of it. So but the point that you raised is exactly see, I don't think of requirements like that, but maybe because I'm a product owner, I think of requirements as desirements. Actually, exactly that. I think of them as a series of things that I need to deliver value, and hopefully I've broken those things down into small chunks of value so that can be articulated and can be tested, that we know when we do, and can be measured when I deliver that. Because, and this is something that you talk a lot about in your classes, you need to have outcome-based backlog items, right? They need to, desirements, which is a fabulous word.
Well, thanks. We didn't rehearse this, although it might feel like that.
Dave and Rob, I have a question here, and it seems like this might be a good time to do it. So you talked a little bit about the requirements, but we had a question early on about helping to guide the team as a whole and having a product owner set a solid vision. that then helped drive those other pieces. Do either of you have any experience with vision and how important that plays in and how you communicate that vision to the people who are then going to turn that vision into requirements or desirements?
So I'll start, Rob, and see if you can,
Oh,
and I'll probably get it horribly wrong. But so there's no, this is the only way you describe a vision. You know, the point of the vision is it needs to, and obviously there's lots of techniques like the lean canvas and the like that can really help to articulate and present the vision, maybe even help you understand the vision. But ultimately, the vision gets communicated continuously. And in many different forms. You know, you're always describing true north to the team in every sprint review and every sprint planning session, which sometimes can actually be very challenging because as a product evolves, when you're releasing a product the first time, it's actually relatively easy to set a vision and to do it. But when you've got lots of feature requests coming in from your customers, when you've got bugs and defects, sometimes you sort of lose the way. So being able to clearly sort of pull that back, say, hey, what we're trying to do is X. We're trying to deliver the most amazing productivity tool in the world, or we're trying to provide this seamless outcome for I don't know, a bank teller or whatever, or, you know, so they can underwrite loans in the most amazing way. And these are the desirement features that we have around it. You know, it must be seamless. It must be customer interactive. It must be intelligent. You know, whatever those characteristics are. Being able to deliver that continuously in a few words. Now, so things like elevator pitches really help. Having that elevator pitch that you can get out over and over again. T-shirts with it written can help. Putting it on the wall can help. You know, and then also asking the question over and over again, hey, how does this help to deliver against the vision? Rob, any other practical advice for this question?
Yeah, I always argue from the Start With Why video from Simon Sinek, because it really, to me, it comes one step before the vision. It's why you wake up, why you get up in the morning in order to really go and do what you're about to do. And you may even see the sprint goal of a sprint as kind of like the vision for the sprint in a real smallish vision. I like to use that as a metaphor other than what you already said. And from that, you can go further and further. And it's the product vision board as a lean canvas as a useful tool. Yeah, you already mentioned that.
So, but communicate it continuously, review it continuously, document it frequently on walls and on any white surface that you can find. You know, get some posters up. You just continually talk about it, and talk about it from a customer point of view. Because if you don't do that, you can often lose sight. It's very easy to sort of get so bogged down in the details of what you do because they're kind of fun and they're interesting, and you forget what you're trying to achieve. You forget what the outcomes are. So if you're trying to change the world, describe it from the customer's point of view, not from your organization's point of view. I hope that answers your question. So Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about backlogs? Because you know I'm awful at managing my backlog.
Are you?
Well, I aspire to do a really good job, but ultimately I find that sometimes I'm overwhelmed by it, and I sometimes don't ask for help because I feel sort of almost territorial about my backlog. And sometimes, you know, I'm like, this is my backlog. It needs to reflect the vision of where I'm going. I need to structure it in a way that reflects that. I need to make sure that it's measurable. And I often find it very challenging because I'm so busy that I don't have time. So, you know, Sunday night whilst watching, I don't know, some Dancing with the Stars or whatever, I'm sitting there on my laptop with my wife and I'm trying to manage my backlog, and I never do a good job. So maybe you can share some good advice that you would give me.
I think I would give you the advice that I've seen some great CEOs make after they come back from a holiday. Because what they do when they come back from a holiday, one CEO I know, he always tends to send out an email to the entire staff saying something went wrong with his email, and if it was really important, please get back to me once again, or give me a phone call because I've lost all my email and now I need to proceed. And he had like 1,500 emails out there which could be perceived as product backlog items with some imagination. But he tends to find ways to make his backlog smaller and smaller and smaller again, even sometimes doing the dirty stuff like saying, hey, I've lost it, please ping me back if you need me.
Oh, so he literally says, he literally bankrupts the backlog, as it were. He literally says, okay, let's start again because I don't know. Funny you should say that. Moving tools kind of does that sometimes. So we're currently moving from a Trello backlog to a Jira backlog here at Scrum.org, and we try out lots of different tools, and we're always moving because because we're like nosy Parkers and we like to try everything because of what our community is trying, but also because we're using GitHub and we're trying to connect it and stuff like that. Anyway, okay. So that process of moving has meant that we had to spend some time sort of refining and we threw out a bunch of stuff that hadn't, it's a bit like shirts you don't wear. You should go through your wardrobe every couple of years and throw out stuff that you don't wear, and it's a bit like that to do on the backlog as well. So that's good advice. Let me press that. I've learned not to use my mouse because it's too sensitive on this. So, which brings us, I think, to the vision question. Hey, Rob. So, yep. Ultimately, it's a question that we just had from Steve. So, owning the product vision, setting true north for the team. Plans evolve over time. We talked about that. Clarity comes from the work. Will change every sprint, but refinement is crucial for reviewing. So, I'm a big fan of refinement. I'm a big fan of involving people in refinement, like bringing people into even not doing it necessarily as a big group activity, doing that sometimes, doing it when there's like, hey, come and spend some time and help me refine, getting different people from the team in to do that. That was something that Steve, when he was Scrum Master, encouraged me to do, and trying to get this sort of ultimate continuous process of understanding, but with we have a very clear mission at Scrum.org to improve the profession of software delivery. Everything that we do should move us towards that. Everything should be measurable around that, and everything should help us deliver on this vision. And so we have a roadmap that talks about the chunks of work that we believe are the most important ones that we can, or not necessarily the most important, the ones we can do, unfortunately, sometimes as well, that are driving that. And we communicate that. For instance, on Thursday, I'm communicating that to our own community. So that's how we do it. In terms of, how do you guys, when some of your clients do it, where they've got very particular projects and very particular plans, right?
Sure. And depending on how dynamic their environment is, we tend to use this visualization for seeing what kind of stuff is in there. And some clients decide to put max 50 items in there over the three columns that you see. Some clients, we challenge them on really validating that the business cases they turn into product backlog items really get validated in the end. So we put an extra column beside the done column, and we do a validated value column. That is concept of my colleague Peter Koning, and he says we'll put a validated value column in there to make ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to really validate the business value that we said we thought we would achieve. And we can also validate our stakeholders in doing so. And the best advice is actually, it may be even tweet-worthy, is to do your stakeholder management on decisions with all the stakeholders, maybe in your sprint preview, but do it together. And the real stakeholder management, like relationship-wise, is one-on-one. Because I see a lot of product owners do stakeholder management one-on-one and kind of promising several stuff to several stakeholders when they're having lunch, having drinks, having their network meetings.
Yeah, I do that all the time, Rob, as you can attest to. Every face-to-face, when I meet PSTs who are a big stakeholder to the Scrum.org, our professional Scrum trainers, people like Rob, I always commit to things and change order of backlog items on a one-on-one basis, and that ends up hurting me because then they come back to me and go, hey, because they're all incredibly smart people, hey, why didn't you said you were gonna, I'm like, oh, well, situation changed.
So my advice to you would be have drinks with them, build relationships with them, and have like the Scrum Gum you have maybe as a kind of like a tool or an event that you can make decisions together with them. So one-on-one stakeholder management on relationships, one-to-end stakeholder management on decisions.
That's really good. That is tweet worthy if I could fit it into that many characters. But more importantly, yeah, and you told me something else as well, which is worrying, because I'm doing a roadmap review with you guys on Thursday, the community, and I realized I haven't actually got any of the value with the value metrics on my deck. So that's something that we probably should add to this slide going forward, just to even make me do it, which would be really, really good. So you mentioned that, I think this sums very nicely and moves very nicely into this, that ultimately, you're going to have to find out what works for you as a product owner around managing all these different stakeholders. That's both subject matter experts, stakeholders that are involved or have a vested interest in the product you're building, and obviously the development team who's actually delivering the working software that amazes the customer, etc. So Rob gave some good advice or you gave some good advice, Rob, on the sort of like the stakeholder management, the relationship building one-on-one, but ultimately decision making very transparent in front of everybody, right? Which is important. And I think that the product owner makes the decisions though. And ultimately, all of these people are part of that process, and hopefully you make it as transparent as possible. But ultimately, they have to make those decisions. And it's possible that as more stuff gets on the radar, as they're dealing with more teams, more complexity, that it might be just setting those guardrails, and they may spend less time actually writing criteria for a user story, past criteria for a user story, etc.
So we're talking more about leadership than really on managing. Of course, you need to manage the backlog. You have management responsibility and accountability, but it's more of leadership, visionary, than it is on somebody who's driving tasks, actually.
Exactly. So it's a leadership role, managing those stakeholders. You gave some good advice for how to keep them all happy as opposed to committing yeses to everybody, saying no frequently.
They will not be happy, Dave. I didn't promise you that.
I know, but making them happy on the long run as opposed to making them happy in the short term, much easier to make them happy in the short term. I've discovered this. It's like the balance of payments deficit. Much easier not to worry about the long-term stuff. Much easier to concentrate on. The other thing that's important, and I think that around leadership, is refreshing that vision frequently. Making sure that you refresh it, using different forms to communicate it, showing, that this is the right way to be going, and talking to people about that vision frequently, I think is very important.
Yeah.
So the next and the last topic I think that we have on our radar is around who plays the role, and because this is something that everybody has a challenge at. So when we see, Scrum is 21 years old. Last year it turned 21. And one thing that we see over and over again is as organizations adopt Scrum, and as I said, there's about 12 to 15 million people doing Scrum. The majority of organizations have some form of Scrum happening in their organization. And as they move to product owner, who out of their existing waterfall traditional organization should become that person? Is it the project manager? Is it the business analyst? Is it the relationship manager? Some IT organizations have relationship managers, which who doesn't need that, hey? And is it the product manager from the business in IT organizations, or from an ISV, the product manager that was the classical role that pragmatic marketing talks about over and over again? Who does play that role? And and I think this next slide really sums up. Rob, this is what Rob said when I asked him this question.
I did, yeah, and this is time to play the trump card of each and every consultant, and that is the "it depends" card.
Ooh.
You asked who is it? It depends on the organization, but the typical primary skills we see in great product owners are listed here. And the first is visionary. When you talk about Steve Jobs as the perfect role model for a product owner, visionary is definitely a trait. So if you know those people, those pioneers who talk about why we do what we do, who talk about how it addresses our customers' problems, how it is a solution for our bigger problems, visionary is the #1 trait, I must add. Second is decisive. Decisive also implies formal leadership. I think informal leadership is derived from the other traits, especially visionary, and also the communicative aspect of knowing when to pull down a little bit and then step forward again. And decisive is formal and informal. Also formal that you, for some decisions, you sometimes need a management position because some stakeholders or other people don't respect you if you don't have that decision authority, unfortunately. And the great product owners really look for the vision. I love that picture. I didn't see it, but 2 slides ago, you made this great picture of having the vision and going forward, and that is really a great product owner.
It is a great product owner. It's funny, and the other characteristic is empowered, has business knowledge, and is technological savvy. So what I see is the greatest product owners I ever worked with had that business sort of customer orientation, but they got enough about technology sometimes to be dangerous. So they tended to come from the business world, even if they were working in technology. They tended to get the customer. And I think that's the most important thing. That's the thing that I can't, even if I ask the best questions in the world, I won't even know what questions to ask if I don't understand the customer. And understanding the customer is crucial. If that's an internal IT system, that's still customers of the users of that system. If it's an external system, obviously, those people are paying for it. It's easier to at least measure that, but being able to do that, and then it does depend. Ultimately, it really does, unfortunately. But I like these 2 commandments.
Yeah, because the ideal picture that we just drew is it's almost like a fata morgana. You can't reach it. You want to reach it, but you can't get there. And these 2 commandments, I love that you put 2 commandments up, because it's kind of like an ideal world that we want to get next to, and we can get next to, and it's more about the path of going there than actually reaching it. But you need to be available while being empowered with the traits that we just saw, and their phone is your answer for a lot of these things. Can't hear you.
Oh.
All right.
Oh, Dave, did we lose your mic?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
You're back now.
Nope.
Oh, now you can. Oh, what happened there? As Rob got very excited, everything, of course, went wrong on the webcam. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But those two commandments are crucial. And what you often find in most organizations is pick one. Empowered to make decisions, or they're available. You can't have both. And in those situations, I have to say, empowered to make decisions is the most important one. The availability, you have to then just work out how you can make it work. And there's lots of, Rob talked about proxies, he talked about other mechanisms, following them around, getting a phone that's always that you just put in their pocket, like a bat phone or whatever. You know, those sort of those things become very, very important. So let's, as we come to the end of our webinar, let's talk about making it work. And let's talk about 2 very, oh, hang on, this is a very cool build. Sabrina, who works with us, did this, and it always shocks me. But, you know, being the mini CEO, being that entrepreneur, being that decision maker, there's 2 areas around this. And I think, you know, Rob, these are your slides that you often don't have as slides. You draw them on the board, but when you have your product owner class. But do you want to just go through this in a little bit of detail for the audience?
Sure. The slide on the right is the maturity of the product owner with the expected benefits of where you are as a product owner. And you might have noticed that the colors are connecting. So you see the pink scribe-ish is connecting to the left on the inner part of the bigger picture. And we do see that there is actually no excuse not to start with the product owner role. You might be a scribe only writing down what people want. That is unfortunate, but it could be the case. Whereas the proxy is mandated for 2 or 3 sprints most of the time. And when we get to the next step, like business representative, that's more like a product management position now. We're from the business, we're from the domain. We have our ends, we have our lines with the client. Whereas sponsor is now you have mandate and you have budget for the teams that are working on the project or the product. And in the right you have entrepreneur. That's the ideal picture, the mini CEO, who, when you look on the left, has management authority, has a company vision that he or she is really influencing. And when we connect those colors, it tends to really work well-ish from the business representative outward. But here you see that there is really no excuse not to start. It's just different areas of focus. And when you, for example, are a proxy in the yellow atmosphere, then you need more other people for the product vision, the product strategy, and the business strategy. Ideally, a product owner is occupied mostly from the release plan to the business strategy, with influence on the company vision. So that's how these slides are connected.
I think this is really, really good because it says a couple of things to me. I know when I saw you, you took a photograph of the original, which is, and then you talked it through it with me when we were planning for this webinar. And what I really liked about it, Rob, is it said a couple of things. One, you can get going today even if you're, I guess that color is what, pink or something? I don't know what that color is. Yeah. But the bottom, you know, that bottom color, you can get going today. You won't be as effective, maybe. You're going to find you know, banging your head against a brick wall a lot, but you can get going today. You know, and hopefully as you learn through retrospective and through delivering working software, you know, some of those things around the value that you're delivering, the decisions that you're making, even the effectiveness of the team will be you know, front and center every sprint. And then that can maybe drive this change in your organization to go up this level of maturity until you get some level of ownership. And I think that's the reason why it's called maturity. Isn't actually just a mistake, it's actually on purpose, because you can mature this over time, but you can only do it if you pay very close attention in your retrospectives to the challenges your team's facing, and don't always just say, oh well, that's just the way we're working in this organization, because that end goal, that entrepreneur, that mini CEO, that decision-making body that allows you to drive agility, business agility into your organization is very possible, but it requires you to change. It requires you to be empowered. It requires some decisions to be made by the organization to empower and free the team to become more agile, which I think these slides are really, really good. So finally, I've got 2 more slides, and then we'll call it a day, and then we'll have time probably for 1 or 2 questions. But you know, these 2 sides, the yin and yang, building the right thing, building it right. Building, it's not said quite like that, but building the right thing, building the thing right, you know, as it is said. Yeah, so which should you do? And Charles Bradley, one of our PSTs, he's got a great website, scrumcrazy.com in the US. I recommend you look at the associated articles. He's done a really good job, and it sums it up, you know, that building the right thing requires product market expertise, product vision, decision making around what we're delivering, the value maximizer spreadsheet sometimes in your head, sometimes a real spreadsheet, managing that backlog, facilitating stakeholders, making sure we're building that right thing, managing that community, as opposed to spending loads and loads of time making sure we build the thing right. And so by emphasizing the stuff on the left, that doesn't mean you don't get involved in the stuff on the right, that you really, that is the responsibility of product ownership. And every task that you do, every minute of your day should be focused on that left as much as possible. And I think that really is a great slide that sums up the sort of focus around value. Now, finally, whoa, this is a build, which always surprises me. Sometimes your Scrum team sort of surprises you, which is great. So I just want to sum up what we've said, and then Rob, please add to this. But not responsible for writing all the tests, writing all the requirements, knowing everything about everything. I mean, obviously I know everything about everything, but most product owners don't, just for the record. But is responsible for delivering value and ensuring that it's measured, damn it. Managing trade-offs. What do you mean? The guys in the Netherlands, our PSTs in the Netherlands and the guys in India have different requirements. Surprise, surprise, have to manage those trade-offs. My approach is ignore them all. And then leading the delivery of a valuable product, driving that vision, driving that focus. And that means they have to be, you know, they're visionary, they have to be decisive, they have to communicate, they have to be empowered, they have to be available at the right time, and you have to work in a mechanism that works for your in your own organization. I need to add there, Rob, and I know we're close to time, but
I just want to mention that we are talking about the ideal picture a lot, and
yeah.
with the risk of talking about five-legged sheeps. Is that American English? I'm not sure.
No, it's not, but I think we all get it. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
The unicorn.
The unicorn, yes. In order we cannot reach that, then there is always something that can guide you. So we do have some stuff that's in the heart of Scrum that can help you. We do have 5 values that you can always adhere to. We do have an Agile manifesto that may help us if we're not in the right zone for finding the quick fix. And I also want to refer back to the evolution slide of the different roles and the maturity there. There is also a great blog post by colleague PST Ron Ehringa on the different levels of scribe, proxy, business representative, etc. that describe how they work. And I don't want to paint the picture like it's easy, just go to the right and be a mini CEO, be an entrepreneur. It's often taking a step back, then 2 forward, having to deal with some inbound politics, so we need to do certain stuff first and later. But these Scrum values can really help you in getting further. They can really help you using courage, having focus, being committed, and with respect, sometimes even bluntly saying no if it's not what we want to do or can do, actually. If you don't say no enough, then your yes doesn't really have value.
And that's deep, man. So I think we have time for one question, Steve, do we? I know we're coming up to our hour, and our time box is very important to us.
We do have time for one question, and this one came very early on, I think from Roland, was asking about comparing product owners to product managers to project managers.
Yeah.
And he's seeing some overlap in his environment. So does someone want to take that one?
Yeah, it's interesting. So let me just take, because there's 3 different roles there. Let me just talk about project manager to product owner. A product owner does have some organization skills. They do. I don't seem to manage that, but a good one does have some organization skills. But ultimately, we're not managing the activities and the processes like a project manager is. We're not managing the project, we're managing the value. So that doesn't mean a good project manager can't be a good product owner, but that's not their job. And one of the biggest problems we have, or I see, when a project manager becomes a product owner is that he still take all of that process control, that activity control, those instead of concentrating on outcomes, instead of concentrating on value, instead of setting that vision, they concentrate on, hey, did we have a meeting to discuss this? Oh, hang on, let me put a plan together. Let me put the minutes around this. I'm not saying project managers all do this either, but ultimately, if you look at it out of the, as the book says, the role of product owner is about setting vision and focused on outcomes. The role of project manager is about the activities and the work. And there's a big difference there between those two roles. Rob?
Yeah, and often I also see a project manager is held accountable for making the project succeed, which may be a short-term or a mid-term focus. And as a product owner, you're there for maximizing the value, which can be, of course, you want to get value as soon as possible, but it can be longer term than that. So when the project manager is getting a lot of pressure from the outside world, then the short-term focus may lead to suboptimal decisions with the team.
Yeah, that's really good. And then the last point, the question, because I know we're at time, is the product owner versus the product manager. That's actually a lot more complex, because a good product manager honestly has a lot of the characteristics of a good product owner. The only challenge you have in most organizations with product managers is that they themselves have become more the keepers of process and the keepers of sort of content, and that gets in the way of them making the right decisions around requirements. But interestingly, the first book, the book by Ken and Mike Beadle, Ken Schwaber and Mike Beadle, the actual role is called the Agile Product Manager, the Agile Product Manager. So they talk a lot about that. It didn't become the product owner until later on, as they realized that the real focus wasn't about managing the product, as in enacting all these processes, etc. It was actually about outcomes, hence the title change.
Excellent, thank you for that. So one really quick bookkeeping. We had a question about whether the slides are going to be available. Excellent. So
you bet. They'll be available, as will be the recording. I say that as the product owner of Scrum.org, who is actually responsible for the value that this webinar is delivering.
Excellent. So that's good. We did have a question for that, so that answers that question. So I think we're at time. Thank you, everybody who attended. Had some really great questions come through. Hopefully everybody had their answers taken care of. If not, you can continue to communicate with us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Please take those opportunities to engage with not only our two wonderful presenters here, but everybody else in the Scrum.org community. We are there to help you with product ownership and any other challenges you have. So please, if you've got questions, you need help, come to Scrum.org. We are the home of Scrum.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.